Back from your quick stretch, we're now going to look at the next topic, which is professionalism and ethics. And we're quickly going to go through the King Code principles. We're going to look at how we deal with unprofessional behavior. We're going to look at how we deal with unethical business practice as well. So that's the three aspects within professionalism and ethics that we're going to quickly look at. Now, it's almost a certainty that somewhere in your exam paper, whether it be in section B or section A or in an essay question, that these King Code principles will always appear. They've been appearing for the last few years, and these three specific principles is something that you need to know. There are many other King Code principles that exist within the King Code that was developed by Judge Mervyn King, but these are the three principles that we expect the grade 12s to focus on. So the first one is accountability, and accountability focuses on management, shareholders, and auditors. That's what sets it apart from transparency and responsibility. The focus is on management, shareholders, and auditors. So your question says, explain how businesses can apply the King Code principles of transparency, accountability, and responsibility. So here you're going to have to explain, which means the marks are going to be split again. One mark for making the statement and clarifying the statement as well. So you were asked to explain the application. Okay, so it's applying the King Code principles, which is important here to explain. When they say explain how the business can apply the King Code principles, they're not asking you to explain what accountability means. They're not asking you to explain what transparency means. They're not asking you to explain what responsibility is. So make sure you understand the question. Are they asking you to explain the King Code principle, or are they asking you to apply the King Code principle? And in this particular question that you have in your workbook, they are asking you to apply the King Code principle. So you must be careful not to just be explaining the King Code principle. Okay, so let's look at how we can apply accountability, which is related more to management and the shareholders of the business there. So accountability, we can apply it by regular communication, and regular communication between who? Management and its stakeholders. Now remember, stakeholders are everybody in the vicinity of the business. So it's the customers, the suppliers, the employees, the community the business operates in. So there must be regular communication between management and all the stakeholders of the business. Then the business can also appoint an internal or external auditor. Why do you want to appoint an internal or external auditor? To validate the financial records, to approve it, and to make sure that it is trustworthy. Now remember, the internal auditor is somebody that is appointed by the business. They work for the business. So if I ask my internal auditor to check my financial records, they still work for the business. So their viewpoint might be a bit skewed. So that's why we want to employ an external auditor as well. External auditors don't work for the business. They purely come in and validate and check the records to make sure that what we have stated in our records is in fact accurate. So that's how we can apply the principle of accountability. Then with transparency, if we look at the slide, we see that the decisions and actions must be clear, because being clear and honest, that's what transparency is. Why? Because we mustn't have any hidden agenda. So it must be clear without any hidden agenda. And when we recruit staff, as an example, we should be open and fair, giving everybody an equal opportunity. So that's how we can apply transparency. And the last one, responsibility. And the responsibility normally focuses on the triple bottom line, which is profit, people, and the planet, making sure that we make our profit in a way that we can firstly maximize our profit without harming any person or people in our community or our employees, and also not harming our planet or our environment that we are operating in. So it's about that triple bottom line that comes in with ethics and with the professionalism as well over there, with the social responsibility part of the business. So we can develop and implement programs. What are these programs going to do? They're going to be aimed at protecting the communities that they're operating. So those programs will be aimed at protecting and uplifting and providing some benefit to the communities that they operate in, and then develop remedial programs to protect the environment, such as water pollution or disposing of our waste products in a responsible manner as well. So with accountability, the focus is on management and the shareholders and the auditors, With transparency, the focus is on the reports and the processes and the policies which ensure that all the information that is important is open and clear and transparent to everybody that needs to see it. And the responsibility is about the triple bottom line, making sure we're making profits in a way that is not harming the people in our community or not harming the planet itself as well. Okay. Then the next two aspects we look at with regards to this section of work on professionalism and ethics is dealing with unprofessional businesses practices. Now, there's often confusion between what constitutes unprofessional business practices and what constitutes unethical business practices. So you must be clear that and make sure when you prepare your work, you know that when we are dealing with unprofessional business practices, it's going to be the aspects of abusing work time. It's going to be the aspects of sexual harassment. It's going to be the aspect of unauthorized use of funds. So those three aspects are only linked to unprofessional business practices, whereas the unethical business practices, that's going to be pricing of goods in rural areas, tax evasion, and unfair advertising. So the first thing we look at is how can businesses deal with unprofessional business practices. So how can we deal with people that are abusing work time? And there are various ways of abusing work time. It could be abusing the work's internet, could be using the phone, could be doing your own personal thing during the work time or time that you should be doing your work. So what can we do to people who are abusing the work time? So what's important with dealing with these unprofessional business practices, we don't want to focus on negative strategies. Okay? So quite often when people are answering questions with regards to dealing with unprofessional or unethical business practices, the first answer we often get is dismiss them or fire them. Now, we don't really want to encourage you to use that negative approach first. We should rather be focusing on remedial or fixing the problem so that the person doesn't do it again, because we want that person to learn and develop as well. So we should be looking at positive strategies in terms of dealing with unprofessional business practices. So try not to use just dismiss the person as the first option, because it's very difficult to dismiss a person. There's lots of processes that you have to go through. So you can't just dismiss a person for something like abusing work time and unethical use of funds. Not always. Sometimes you can, depending on the nature of the act that they have done, if it is illegal as well. But try and use policies and procedures or steps or programs that will actually help the person and fix the problem at hand. So when we look at abuse of work time, what we want to do is we want to try and speak to the person directly involved. So we look at the problem and see how they are abusing their work time. We speak to them directly. Why do we want to speak to them directly? Because we want to make it known to them. We identified that you are abusing work time, but we want you to correct your behavior. So we approach them directly and we have a discussion with them and we ask them to correct their behavior. We can also develop a code of conduct or a code of ethic or a set of rules about the abuse of work time, so that it's clear to people that if I do this, if I use my cell phone while I should be teaching a class, that's abuse of work time. Or if I'm surfing on the internet trying to book a holiday destination while I should be teaching, that's abuse of work time. So there should be policies in place that makes it clear to the person that this is what abuse of work time constitutes, and that's the behavior we don't want to encourage. Right? And that's positive because we're not looking to punish the person straight away. And the last suggestion there is monitor employees to see if their work is done. So we can monitor the productivity of the person to see if they are actually achieving their goals, and if they are abusing their work time, is it affecting their work performance and so on. Then sexual harassment. With regards to sexual harassment, now remember sexual harassment is any unwelcome attention of a sexual nature or something that can be regarded as a sexual act. That is sexual harassment. When you make someone feel uncomfortable and you're making them feel uncomfortable in a way that can be regarded as a sexual type of uncomfortable feeling that you give the person, that is sexual harassment. And this is obviously something we want to address in the workplace, because that has lots of negative impacts for the business and for the people involved in that particular sexual harassment case. So what can we do to deal with sexual harassment? Let's have a look and see what we can do with that. We can formulate a policy. So the policy will stipulate what sexual harassment is and what will happen if people are found guilty of committing acts of a sexual harassment nature. We can also educate employers about what activities are constituted as being sexual harassment so that they know if I do this, it's going to be considered as sexual harassment. So now it's clear to me that I should not be doing that. For example, touching a person on their shoulder might make them feel uncomfortable, and you don't know it. So therefore, you educate your staff and you say, this is what sexual harassment is, so don't do this at all in the workplace, because you don't even want to have a chance of being accused of sexual harassment, because that has lots of negative implications for you, for the person who's accusing you, and for the business as well. Okay, and then the last one there, unauthorized use of funds and resources. So it's using the business's money for your own benefit, or using the business's resources for your own benefit. And what you can do is you can conduct regular audits of your financial records to see that no money is being misused or stolen by somebody. You can also limit the number of staff with access to funds or access to other resources that you might not have, so that if resources or funds go missing, you know exactly who you need to approach to try and find the reason for that funds being missing. And then with regards to using your assets and your resources, you can have a logbook that people need to fill out when they actually use that particular resources or assets over there. Okay, so that's how we can deal with unprofessional business practices. And remember, unprofessional business practice is linked to abuse of work time, sexual harassment, and unauthorized use of funds. Now dealing with unethical business practices. Now this is only related to pricing in rural areas, tax evasion or taxation, and unfair advertising. So then when a business, to make sure the business deals with these issues, we must monitor the prices that are being charged in the rural areas to make sure that they are fair and market related. Now, fair and market related doesn't mean that if the price is slightly higher, that it is an unfair price. Because you must remember, in rural areas, the prices are slightly higher because there are added costs of getting that product to the rural areas. There's transportation costs, there's cost of storing that product, etc. So it costs a bit more to get the product to the rural areas. So yes, it is still fair if the prices are slightly higher, but they must still be market related. You mustn't be exploiting any of the customers. So that's what we mean with fair and market related prices. And then the next suggestion we could have is to promote entrepreneurship. Because if we have more businesses opening up in townships, there's more competition, and that competition itself will regulate the prices in the market. Then with regards to tax evasion, remember, tax evasion is an illegal activity where we're trying to hide the source of our income so that we can pay less money to SARS. So what we can do to make sure that we are not involved with tax evasion is to ensure that the business pays its taxes regularly to SARS and on time. And we can employ auditors, both internal and external auditors, to calculate the tax payments and make sure those payments are made to SARS in time. And then with unfair advertising as the last unethical business practice, we must ensure that all the advertising that we use has all the relevant and important information that we are communicating to the customer. So whatever the customer needs to know, that information must be on the advertising, must be correct and must be relevant. You mustn't be trying to misrepresent the product or mislead the customer in any way, because then the customer will have rights in terms of the Consumer Protection Act to get some form of recourse where they can either get their money back or they can return the product or so on. Okay, but that will be, so you must not try and mislead or misrepresent the product so that you can make the sale. Okay, then the last section of work that we have to look at is creative thinking. And we're quickly just going to go through what you need to know. So on this slide here, you can see what you need to know with regards to problem solving and what you need to know with regards to creative thinking. But we are only going to look at a few things in creative thinking. The first thing we're going to look at is the problem solving cycle. Now, the problem solving cycle, grade 12s, a common error here is that people confuse the problem-solving cycle with the strategic management process. Okay, now the strategic management process and the problem-solving cycle have some similar elements, but you must make sure not to confuse the two. So when you get the question, you don't want to be writing down the information that is related to the strategic management process. You want to write down the information that is related to the problem-solving cycle. Okay, so when we look at the problem-solving cycle, it is the first step over there is to identify the problem. Okay, now again, depends on how they ask the question here. If they ask you to list the items, you're going to get 1 mark for just listing it. If they ask you to explain it, you're going to get 1 mark for stating what we have in the cycle here. So when we say identify the problem, that's going to be 1 mark. And then you say, why do you want to identify the problem, or what is the problem? So the first step is identifying exactly what the problem is and why it is a problem. Then we're going to define the problem and say, what is the problem that has been caused? What is the effect of the problem? And what do we need to try and solve? That is part of defining the problem. Then the third step is to identify possible solutions. Now, with possible solutions here, we're going to identify as many possible solutions as we can. So we're going to look at different ways of solving the problem. So we don't want to just find one solution. We're going to look at different solutions that we could possibly adopt. And then we're going to examine and study all those possible solutions. And then the fourth step is selecting what we feel is the most appropriate solution for that particular problem. And once we've selected that appropriate solution, we're going to develop a strategy or plan of action as to how we're going to implement that. And the implementation is the 6th step in the problem-solving problem. We implement the strategy or the action plan that was identified in step 5. And then once the strategy has been implemented, we also in step 7 going to monitor. And what you do when you monitor is you make sure that you are checking if this strategy is working or not. And in step 8, we evaluate to see whether the solution was successful or not. And remember, grade 12, this is called a problem-solving cycle. So it's something that's going to continue the whole time. So once you get to step 8, you're going to evaluate whether this solution was successful or not. If it wasn't successful, then you're going to start the process again, and you're going to say, why wasn't it successful? Is the problem still existing? And you're going to go through all the steps again. Obviously, if it was successful and your problem was solved, then that is where your process will end. But sometimes there is a continuous cycle of problems, so you're going to continue this process over and over again until you're able to solve all your problems. Unfortunately, if you are a business person, there's always going to be different problems of different natures. So you're going to be applying this cycle to many different problems as they occur in your business. Okay, so that's the problem-solving cycle. And again, depending on how they ask the question, if it's just identify the steps, you're going to get 1 mark for identifying the steps. If it is explaining it, then you're going to have to explain it a bit more using full sentences in a bit more detail over there. Okay, now with creative thinking, there are some benefits. So we're going to quickly look at the benefits of creative thinking. And the first benefit here is unique or better ideas. And why is this a benefit when you have unique or better ideas? Is because you're coming up with different solutions to your problem. So sometimes you have reoccurring problems. We call that routine thinking. Always leads to reoccurring problems where we do things in the same way, so therefore that problem is going to keep on happening. So when we think creatively, we come up with better solutions which might then result in that problem that's reoccurring normally now stop reoccurring. So we look at different or better solutions to solve our problems that we continuously might have. The next benefit of creative thinking is a competitive advantage. So you might be able to develop this thing called a competitive advantage. Now, grade 12, the competitive advantage is something that you have that benefits your business that another business doesn't have. Okay, so that's what a competitive advantage is. It might be a location, it might be a process that you use, and perhaps through your creative thinking where you have better solutions or better ways of producing your product, you might have the competitive edge of maybe producing faster or producing cheaper. So if you can produce faster, then your competitive edge is you're going to have more products to sell. If you can produce cheaper, then it means you can produce more products as well, because then you are able to produce more because you can buy more resources and materials. So that is a competitive advantage, something that your business has that sets your business apart from another business and is a benefit that you have that another business doesn't have. The third benefit of creative thinking is that you can solve complex problems. Okay, so there's a picture of a man trying to solve a little puzzle, and the puzzle keeps on changing. So with creative thinking, because we're thinking differently and we're developing our creative thinking all the time, we can have difficult or complex problems which we are able to solve a little bit more easily. Then we have increased productivity, because with our better thinking and our creative thinking, we find better ways of doing things, which means we can do things faster and better, which increases our productivity. And with an increase in productivity, we're going to have increased profits, which is the next benefit of creative thinking over there. And the last benefit is that managers become better leaders because they're able to handle different situations a bit better. Okay? Then we have creating an environment that promotes creativity. And here you are asked to suggest or recommend. So here you can see the 2 marks have been allocated at the end of the statement. So here again we're looking for the important aspect of the statement. So you must make sure that you know this list of things that can promote a creative environment to ensure that your staff are creative, and you can come up with creative techniques and processes that you can use. So you can have a look at the slide, make sure that you understand the crux of this. Okay, we're quickly going to look at the problem-solving techniques. These are all the problem-solving techniques that you have to know. We obviously can't go through all the techniques. The more popular ones, the Delphi technique, the force field analysis, nominal group technique, mind mapping, and brainstorming. Those are the popular ones that are asked. So we're quickly going to look at the Delphi technique. Now with the Delphi technique, we normally have a problem. So I've created this example, and I'm not saying this is how it was done. It probably wasn't necessarily done this way, but it is an example of how it could possibly have been done. So let's say the problem was education. Okay, so we're going to quickly look at the slide, and we're going to look at how things unfold in the slide. So we have a problem, and the problem is, let's take education, and let's say that we have people that have been appointed as experts in the field, and the problem is what processes should be in place for schools to be able to be returning. When can they return? What must be done? How do we do it? What's the process? Which grade must go back? So let's say education, the current education problem was the problem that needs to be solved. So what you do is you have a panel of experts, and in our panel of experts here we have our president, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa. We have our Minister of Education, Angie Motshekga. We have the Minister of Higher Education, Blade Mzimande, and we have Debbie Schaefer, which is the Western Cape Education Minister. So let's say they are the brains trust, they are the experts in the field. Now with the Delphi technique, it's important that we know we're going to employ experts, and these experts are going to be in charge of making decisions and going through, or not making decisions, but answering questions and developing the thought processes. So let's say these people were responsible for being part of the problem-solving team. So they are all experts, but with the Delphi technique, what's nice about the Delphi technique is these people don't need to be in the same place at the same time. So they don't have to be in the same location, they don't have to work for the same business. They are just experts in their field, and they can operate from wherever they are. Okay, so these are the 4 experts we're using, but they can operate from wherever they are, and they operate independently, can operate independently as well. So what the business will do is they will develop a questionnaire. And this questionnaire will be developed on what the problem is, what skills need to be addressed, what answers, what processes we need to be answered. And then this questionnaire will be issued to all the experts. And on their own, so not consulting with each other, they will each answer this questionnaire, and they will send this questionnaire back to the business. Okay, so now the question was developed, sent to the experts, and the experts sent it back. Then this questionnaire will be examined. Also, all the responses will be examined, and feedback will be provided to all the experts. And then a second questionnaire will be developed based on the first questionnaire and all the response and the feedback. And again, the same experts will get their own copy of the questionnaire that they must answer. And again, they will complete it and send it back to the business. And again, the business will then examine the feedback and send feedback. And this process will continue until the problem disappears, or until the problem has been solved, or until there has been some sort of resolution there. Okay, so that is the Delphi technique, and that's all we will be looking at with regards to the creative thinking. And we unfortunately still need to go through strategies, but we don't have time to go through all of that. So I'm going to go to all the slides on strategies and answer all the questions that you have in your booklet so that you are able to quickly look at what you are required to answer. So I'm just going to scan back quickly. Mr. Van Sale, do you have any advice as to how they could possibly organize their work so that it is organized in a way that it's easy to identify what belongs to paper 1 and paper 2?
In terms of...
how they prepare for the examination and their notes and so on, just to create some structure for them.
Okay, you're putting me on the spot a bit. Right, paper 1 is about business environments and everything that goes around business environments and, of course, business operations. Okay, business operations has human resources and it has quality in the paper.
But just in terms of like should they organize their study material that this belongs to paper 1 and this belongs to paper 2 so that doesn't create confusion and then they're studying something that belongs in paper 1 with paper 2 and so on, just so how they can organize themselves.
I think it's going to be dependent on your personal preference of how you would like to do things. I would personally put the things aside for paper 1 on one side and know that this is paper 1 and that is paper 2, and I don't get confused, because the one thing that you don't want to do, the reason why they've split the papers is to give you guys a better understanding, because you're only focusing on 2 parts and not everything altogether. So it's easier to study smaller sections of work than what it is for one time to study everything. So the best way to do it is to separate the two things out, and you know what you need to know for paper 1 and what you need to know for paper 2. And then there are sections of work. If you know that you are, for instance, not strong on quality, for example, and this is now paper 1, you are going to focus on everything in environments. Okay? You are going to go through quality to the best of your ability, but you're going to focus on environments. So when you get the questions, you're going to choose question 2, which is only going to focus on environments, and you're going to choose the question 2, 3, 4, which is going to be the one that's miscellaneous. So with other words, the miscellaneous one, there will have another 20 marks only for environment. So your exposure then to business operations will be much less. So that's maybe a strategy that you can follow. And the same with paper 2. When paper 2 comes, and you know I'm strong on ventures, but I don't like roles so much, or I struggle with some of the concepts of roles, then all of a sudden I will spend more time on ventures and then choose question 4. That's another strategy. It is risky because you might get things, and then it's 20 marks in a 150 mark paper that's lost. But for those that are struggling or don't have enough time to prepare, that is maybe a strategy.
So you're saying we must try and play to our strengths, try to perform where we're stronger and where we feel more comfortable, but we should cover everything just to give ourselves enough leeway or room to play with if there's something that we perhaps have not understood. Okay, grade 12s, I'm quickly going to go through all the slides. I'm just going to page through them so you are able to pause the video when you see the video and you can have a look at the information. The slides are structured quite clearly, so it is quite easy to understand, but unfortunately we don't have time to explain all the aspects of strategies, so we're quickly going to go through the slides with you, and I'll hold them for a few seconds so that you can pause. Here we have the definition of what a strategy is and the 4 different types of strategies, or the 4 classifications of how strategies can be developed over here. Okay. Then we have practical examples within each of the strategies. So we're first looking here at concentric diversification. So these are all the diversification strategies. The term diversity means change. So there will be some type of actual change involved in the product. So we have concentric diversification, horizontal diversification, and conglomerate diversification over there. Okay. Then with regard to integration strategies, the term integration means you are bringing something else into the process, so that you are integrating another strategy or another step into the process.
It's actually businesses.
Yeah.
Integrating
Different types of businesses or aspects of different businesses over there. Okay, so here we have the strategy is horizontal and vertical integration that normally takes place.
Mr. de Klerk, can you just hold on, because I had an idea when I did this slide, and I always thought that you need to think of it like a joystick.
Correct.
Okay, because forward is when you take over a distributor, because now you're pushing the joystick forward.
Yes.
Backward is moving it back to the supplier.
Correct.
And to your competitors is to your left and right, so that is horizontal. Okay, so you need to think of it almost like a joystick.
Joystick, yeah.
Forward,
you take over the process
if you
ahead.
push then you're getting ahead. If you go back, that's towards your supplier. Then that is backwards vertical, and then horizontal, because of course the horizontal line is to your competitors, and that is how it works.
Yeah.
So it's an easy way to remember it.
Yeah, I also like to think of it in terms of like, if I am a factory, I'm the middle step.
Yes.
Then if I'm a factory producing orange juice, then the farm that
Yeah.
supplies me with the oranges is my backward step.
Yes.
So if I buy my own farm or buy a farm or take over that farm, then that's backward. I'm taking over the step that goes before what I normally do.
That's right. Or the sector before.
The sector before. And then let's say I employ a distribution company to distribute my orange juice. If I then start distributing my own juice, or I take over that company, then that's forward as well. Okay,
That's
so it's
correct.
also like your joystick, but I like
Yes.
the joystick analogy over there. Okay, so that's your integration strategies. I'll just pause on that practical example that is over there. Then we have defensive strategies over here, designed to protect the business. The first type is divestiture, where you just close down a portion of the business that is not profitable. You're not closing down the entire business. We have liquidation, where the business sells all its assets to try and recover the costs of but the business will also close down after that process takes place. And then the last one is retrenchment, which is something that SAA. So SAA is quite a good example if you get this in an essay for your originality marks. And then finally, we have the intensive strategies here, where we focus on increasing our market share that we have. And the strategies we can use here is market penetration, market development, and product development as the strategies there. And then we also have different environmental analysis tools that we use. And those analysis tools include the SWOT analysis, Porter's 5 forces model, and the PESEL analysis. Now, grade 12s, again, I've done a lot of research into the past examinations, and I've found that at least 2 of these 3 are asked in almost every exam paper. So it means that it must be an almost non-negotiable that you study all 3 of these analysis tools, the SWOT analysis, the Porter's 5 forces model, as well as the PESEL analysis. So remember that when we're doing the SWOT analysis, also try and do it in a table where you separate strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, because that helps to organize your work as well there. All right, so there we have the PESEL analysis, where we look at the five elements is political, economic, social, technological, legal, and environmental aspect of the PESEL analysis. The way this is often questioned is they give you a scenario and they ask you to identify the PESEL element. So it will either be political, economical, social, technological, legal, or environmental. And they will usually ask you to quote from the information that they've given you to substantiate your answer, or to validate your answer. Then we have the Porter's 5 forces model, which is the power of suppliers, power of buyers, power of competitors, threat of substitutes, and barriers to entry. And again, there's 2 ways of doing this. They might give you a scenario and ask you to identify the force that is at play. But a more popular way that they ask this question is they give you 5 statements, and then they ask you to link the statement to one of these 5 forces model, and that was usually worth 10 marks. I'm not sure if they're going to ask that in the same way, where they'll ask for all 5 of Porter's 5 forces model, or they'll ask for 2 or 3. It all depends on the amount of marks that they're looking for. And then we have the strategic management process that you also have to look at. And again, I said when I did the the problem-solving cycle. A lot of people often confuse the strategic management process with the problem-solving cycle. So make sure you know the difference between the two of that. So you need to know what it means. It involves strategy formulation, strategy implementation as well. Okay, and then there is the explanation of the strategic management process. And here the verb was used, explain. So again, you're going to have to make your statement and clarify your statement that you are making in order to get the 2 marks over there. Okay. Then we have strategy evaluation. So this is where we see whether the strategy has worked or not. We evaluate the success of the strategy. And then we have the suggestion in terms of the steps that should be involved in the strategy evaluation. But what's important here is they said suggest. So remember, suggest and recommend are often used together, or they use those two verbs in their questioning, and the 2 marks will be allocated at the end. Okay, grade 12. So that is all the work that was covered in your tutorial booklet. I hope that this information session was useful to you, and that you are able to complete all the sections of work and have a deeper understanding of all the section of work. So from me, I hope that you will start preparing well for your examination process. This is a very, very challenging year for you. Your learning has been very disrupted, and the pressure is on you now to catch up on all the lost time. So I hope that this video will help you. And Mr. Van Zyl, do you have a final word for the grade 12s?
Yes, I do. The buzzword now for grade 12 learning for now until you write exams, and then actually if you go to university as well, is called self-directed learning. So grade 12s, you need to take responsibility for your own learning, and by looking at watching these videos and by cooperating with whatever your teachers give you and taking responsibility for that is now in your hands. So that's my message. So Mr. de Klerk.
Okay, grade 12s, I wish you well for the rest of the year. It is challenging, but know that you have the support and lots of support platforms available with regards to business studies and also all your other subjects. So until we see each other again, keep well. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.